But you're in the position where you're sort of looking at, so what does the sector need now? This new stuff you're bringing in.
Yeah. I suppose the other thing to mention is that, again, I talked about it, sometimes it just feels like fate. And in the run-up to, between applying for this job and starting, there was, we're on quite long notice periods, aren't we, when we're in senior roles? So there was a gap. And during that time I was doing there was some leadership development that had been commissioned by our corporate organisation. And they brought in the systems leadership piece that you've got on the table. So they said, this is probably one of the best pieces that we've got around systems leadership. And I looked at it and just had a quiet smile to myself and thought, well, there you go. I've got the fortune to be stepping into an organisation who actually many years before had already thought about systems leadership. And just around the same time, Leading in Colour was published. And I can remember you sending me a copy electronically. And again, that thinking, how fortunate am I? Because this is going to give me something really, really positive to pick up and lead with, because it had just been published and I could see so much potential. And I suppose in the early days, spending time talking to people about where can we move even further on, and particularly around the equality, diversity, inclusivity and equity space was something that people, we'd gone through some of the real injustices of COVID, and people at the stark reality of that disproportionate impact of COVID. We'd also in the middle of that had the murder of George Floyd, and so it felt like there was a real I was going to say appetite's the wrong word, a real anger at times around those injustices, both from a racial perspective, but also looking at those that were most disadvantaged in communities and how difficult it was for those communities to have the same outcomes that other communities have. So I think in terms of the work that we've, in terms of the things that have really, people have really taken on board, and we've developed a lot of work around both bespoke but also some of the cultural competence work that we've done with a whole range of organisations. And so I think our sector feels even bigger than ever before, because we are working with organisations that really impact on communities. So every child should have access to health services. Most children, the vast majority of children, are in schools. So as well as those within local authorities that are supporting those, we're now working close with organisations like CAFCAS, with health organisations, with organisations like London Councils, who are starting to see that we bring a different approach. So that heart of co-design, that heart of really values-driven development, leadership that creates those spaces, that hasn't changed. That is that common thread through. But I think what we're seeing is a broader set, with the definition of the sector being broader than it was before, and those organisations approaching us and saying, we really love what you're doing. We've heard such positive things, often through word of mouth, through people who've been on the barley or other things that we've done. So for example, the other week I had a call with someone who said, I saw what you've done with public health in London around cultural competence. I want to talk to you some more about what we might be able to do here. And I think that opportunity that's come through a lot of that diversity work, and of course we weave that in as well through the leadership, and thinking about some of the work that you talked about, interestingly, Anton, around the regional work. The regional sector-led improvement work is really starting to gain some traction, and for them to be commissioning, and when I talk about commissioning, it's not just buying, shaping that leadership development. So when I think about some of the work we're doing in the Southwest, for example, really comprehensive look at what does leadership look like in our area? And so how do we need to develop that leadership offer in this area? And so really focusing on themselves, but also that pipeline of leaders moving forward. So I think there's been some real opportunities that come from seeds you've planted, but I've been able to hopefully help them to flourish and to think about, where are the opportunities to take these in other directions as well that can benefit the workforce that's serving children, families and communities out there. So, I think it just feels at times that, I was talking to someone around, 2.5 years, and so much has happened and so many opportunities, and people coming to us with, these issues and saying, can you help us think our way through this? And so that opportunity, again, to help people stand back and to look at what the art of the possible. And the AI work in Scotland that you're going to be working on, already started working on, I think is really, again, another really good example of how we can work with local areas or local systems or to think differently about some of the things that inevitably are there, but they maybe are just keeping their heads down and dealing with the day-to-day, and creating those opportunities to help them do the thinking.
That's a really good example, isn't it? Because what started as a potentially small project suddenly didn't quite work out. It was put as an idea to the sector, who immediately, because of the reputation of the college, were prepared. So the local authorities were prepared to say, no, we'll go with that and an alternative way of doing this. And there is, I think it's ironic here, really, that all those years ago, as we talked about earlier, we had kind of, futures thinking as part of the kind of bedrock of what we're about. That's a practical example of a national government not doing what it should be doing and stepping into a space of, the kind of challenges of AI and education, or schooling in particular, and the sector having the vehicle to have its own conversation and looking to the college to do that. I think that's great.
Do you think the sector's any different now to how it was?
I think it's more sophisticated than it used to be, in the sense that people know there's a growing group of people in principal leadership positions, in my experience, who do get that transaction isn't the answer. They may not know what sort of transformation is required, but they know more transaction isn't the answer. And I'm not so sure there are that many leadership organisations that don't have a high degree of transactional solutions, because it's a product-orientated, sellable way of working, whereas ours is much more organic, I think.
I mean, I think if you look at the leadership styles in principal leadership positions now, I think there are fewer ego-driven hero leaders who think it's all about them. I think the vast majority of leaders now recognise that the issues they are trying to address are so much more complex. And again, coming back to concepts like VUCA, which I know the Staff College has been using for such a long time, there is a real appetite to revisit some of those concepts, because they recognise that these are not issues that any single individual, any even organisation, can solve on their own. So if you look at the complexities of the impact of poverty, of some of the impacts that have come out of COVID on children, families and their communities, no individual can solve those issues. They have to work together as a system, and I think they have to lift their heads up out of the issues that are being posed right now. And so I think particularly during COVID, it did drive a bit of a reactive transactional style. We just have to get the next school shut or open, or shut or open, or shut or open. We need to put, make sure there's food going to people who are vulnerable. It drove a bit of a style that we perhaps wouldn't advocate, but was necessary at that time. And I think people have come out of COVID thinking we need to be able to stand back from this and think differently. And so some of the work that we're doing is absolutely helping them to think about how those systems start to come together, and work with a common moral purpose. What is it that we want to see for the children in our communities, and how do we work back from that?
That's why I love the special educational needs and disabilities work that's happening at the moment, because that's such a multifaceted programme involving so many different organisations and agencies, and it's just been brilliant to make sure that parent carers are involved in that as participants as well as contributors, and really helping sort of shift things. So I think that the more leaders understanding they can only lead by influence, and they can only lead by involving diverse thinking, diverse people. That sounds massive.
I think another facet of our work that all of us get is we do the college, and I still say we, don't I? It's interesting.
I do too, thinking about it.
We tell stories. we tell stories because of work that we've been engaged in. And it's oftentimes, I find myself saying to folk that here's a story from another place where people just like you have got round the table to have a conversation about something that they really know isn't right, but don't know how to kind of move on from. So I think one of the features of the college, since the very beginning, I've realised through this conversation, is it does give people spaces of confidence, either through stories from other places or examples from other places, or authoritative pokes and provocations to rethink stuff. And I think the college is good and continues to be good, I think, in using heuristics. Because if you can name something, you can do something about it. I think the college is good at creating spaces where people can start naming stuff. And then galvanise around, that's what it's about. Then they can kind of feel it a bit to do something about it. And I think the two of you have continued that process.
And I think we've just said goodbye, well, not goodbye because they always keep coming back, but we've just moved our latest group of aspirants into our alumni, although one of them has already secured a DCS job, and so should be starting on the new directors programme. But when I see their growth, and a lot of that is around their confidence and use of self. So seeing themselves and the relationships they develop with others, and the communication they can have with others as an agent for curating difference. And I think some of that we focus much more on the how people go about doing it than this is what you have to do. And I think people sometimes come on to some of the programmes sort of hoping for a tick box solution, and then by the end of the programme realise there isn't any tick box solution. If there was, people would have sorted it probably decades ago. There isn't a tick box solution for these most complex issues, and you have to think about how, as a leader, you use yourself, you use others, you use the relationships and networks and systems that you've got, and they come out with that real sense of that.
I love that. It's how so often we get that feedback. We always get at least one person on any of our programmes saying, "This was nothing like I expected it to be, but it was brilliant."
And sometimes as well, you have to be really open right at the beginning of the conversation. I mean, I still find myself saying from time to time, this isn't about plumbing. We don't do plumbing in the college. Right? This is about what work do you need to decide you need to do, right? And we'll have a conversation about it. And I think that's what remains a pleasure, to be able to actually feel confidence in the college as an organisation, that it gets that this is the way it has to be done. We were talking previously about dilemma often with change is it's so individual linked that when they leave an organisation, whereas the real wins are where everyone agrees this can't continue, own the change, and then that becomes the norm. So new people coming in step into a DNA of doing things differently. And I think the colleges over the years, I think it's got pretty good at doing that, really.
So given we're 25 years in now, if we were looking another 10 years on, so if we were doing this in and say the 35 years of the college in 2034, what would you hope to see?
Well, I'd first direct us to Project 2035. That has 4 different scenarios of the world in 2035. I would absolutely hope to see the college still at its agile best, which is really well engaged with developing the next generation of leaders, whatever iteration that will be, because the colleges live through so many different structural arrangements in local government, children's services, health, and so on. So I think no matter what happens, I think the college should be there, still doing what it does best, which is thinking about the future, creating spaces where leaders can step back, think, work through issues, and leave with a sense of hope and agency, because that's what gets people through, and that's what helps other people as well. It's just infectious. What about you?
Well, I would hope that the next group of folk who might be leading, might still be you, whatever, would look at stuff here.
I'm very, I'll take that compliment, Anton, but I'm not sure I've got 10 years left in me.
That would be looking at, when we look at all of this, some of these have had a real impact in the system.
Absolutely,
some of these initiatives. That the college will be able to look back and say, like the AI work in Scotland, that actually happened and made a difference to how schooling is delivered in Scotland. And we'd be able to say that direction shifted things, right? Children in Scotland now are better prepared to be global citizens than they were before that AI conversation started. How can we best use artificial intelligence to free our classrooms from the boundaries of learning which they currently sit in to something which is totally different, and our young people are open to possibilities, and learning happens all over the place, not just in defined, boundary-driven emporiums.
Something you said there, I just want to say this because again I think it's a thread through the college, is the bit about the college has never been interested in short-term wins, and so that bit about doing something today that you can see enduring and making change in several years' time. I was talking to 3 people the other day who had all been on the same think tank 5 years ago, and all of them were talking about the influence that had had on the work that they'd done, that has now led to the development over the past few years of belonging strategies in their places that are transforming the way in which children belong to their local communities, belong in schools and so on. If we were only interested in quick fixes, we'd have been worried if those hadn't been in place in the following 6 months. But actually, they're being built into the DNA.
A lot of the college's work is slow burn, isn't it? In terms of, but that's where you get true transformational change, really.
And I think similarly, when I look at a lot of the work that's been done around diversity and inclusion at the moment, I was talking to someone who's just now moved on as an alumni of the new directors programme, so they've been a director of children's services for a year, and when they collected their certificate, they thanked the college not only for the fact that they had just come through the new directors programme and felt better equipped to do their role, but actually they'd started out on the Barley programme. And I think it's really heartening to see that we're starting to see some of those shoots, green shoots if you like, in terms of that increasing diversity at a more senior leadership position, and I'd hope to see that continue to flourish as well. So it's not only us flourishing organisationally, because I'd love to look back in 10 years and see that we've continued to flourish, we've continued to bring new ideas and new thinking to the sector and create those spaces, but also that we can see those shifts in, as you say, either how we work with children, young people, or what the workforce looks like and how the workforce thinks and acts and feels confident in its leadership. And when I talk about leadership, I'm not just talking about those most senior leaders, but those that lead as peers, as colleagues, as others, and that we continue to encourage the best of authentic, compassionate leadership.
And of course, during my time in 2020, we had the amazing COVID experience as well, which sort of unravelled the week before the first national lockdown. We were actually delivering our first new directors programme at Warwick University, and people melted away before our eyes. It was the most bizarre time, and unbeknownst to me, I had COVID during it as well. So that is locked in my mind. But COVID was a really good example of how the college has always managed to stay at least one step ahead of what is happening because of its focus on horizon scanning. Because we literally moved from what we were doing in a matter of 3 weeks into becoming virtual staff college. I mean, we even had the name there, ready to use. So we changed, we got the old logo out and put that on, and just morphed into 100% virtual delivery. We just won the government contract for the new aspirant and new director programme. We, with their agreement, rolled that forward and delivered the whole thing virtually for the first period, which was quite smash, doing two new programmes on that basis, but they were brilliant. We had been running summer think tanks. We just converted those into a free online festival that has just had its fourth version, I think, hasn't it?
It's been a great development.
Which was really brilliant, just as a space for our various contributors and people all over the country to just join in something that was fun, informative and free. And we did Project 2035, which was a big scenario planning project, which has formed the basis of some stuff. And we just continued to grow the business. By the time I decided in October 2021, so we've just come into the end of the 2-year pandemic period, that I'd done 3.5 years as opposed to 1 year, and I was now running something that I'd said I never would. And but I was really pleased with where the college had got to, but felt actually now it's time for someone else to take it on. By the time we came to that, I was absolutely delighted to step back and hand over to you. You picked it up in October 2021. How was that for you? What attracted you to the job?
So, well, it was interesting. It was, I mean, for me, there was sometimes these things just feel destined to be, don't they? So I'd during COVID, I suppose, I'd been a director of children's services for some time, and I'd been in a large authority for that time, and I was starting to think, how do I see the rest of my career panning out? What do I see myself staying here? Because I was very happy actually where I was. I'd got a great team, things were, really going well, but also thinking, realistically, I've probably got another, 10, 12, maybe more years that I want to work. Do I see myself staying in this role for that length of time? And came to the conclusion that probably not. And I had some coaching. Actually, I had coaching from someone who happens to be a coach at the staff college in the coaching community, but that is total coincidence, and they didn't coach me particularly in this direction specifically. But we did sort of think through, well, what was it that motivated me? What was it that really made me want to sort of give my all to work? And I came to the conclusion that I was in no rush to leave where I was, but that whatever came next would probably be something that was on a national footprint, something a bit different, and something that would give an opportunity to continue to give to the sector. I wasn't interested in being a local authority chief exec. I wasn't interested in lots of other things, but something that would allow that sort of give back to the sector, that opportunity. I'd gained a lot from people who had supported me through my career, who, you know, and from learner development, and so it would be something that allowed me to give back. And then I was at the national policy event with the Council of Reference for the Association of Directors of Children's Services in the February, and it was online because it was still in COVID. And I can remember you saying, I'm going to be retiring later this year, and so we will be looking for a new chief exec, and it's a wonderful job if anyone's interested. And I sat and thought,
I remember your face.
wow, that might be just the thing I'm looking for. And then almost talked myself out of it, a bit like you, in that, can I really do it? You know, this is, I think that what strikes me about the staff college is that it's always punched massively above its weight in terms of its reputation. And, you know, credit to the two of you for building that reputation. That doesn't happen overnight. That's something that you gain through providing really credible support and leadership development for the sector. So in my head, a bit like yours, I'm not worthy. You know, I'm really not. I'm not worthy of running an organisation of this standing. But I can't miss this opportunity. It feels like too good an opportunity to miss. You clearly, I don't know whether you advised on the appointment process, but if you did, you clearly tried to make it as attritional as the process you've been through. So having applied for the job at the beginning of April, by the end of May, I think it was, or even early June, I actually got offered it. Because we had all of these different stakeholder sessions, and the staff team, as it was, interviewed me then, and the board, and all of these different processes. And so here I am, and I suppose that, you know, I and then went through that process of, oh my goodness, they've offered me the job, I really, really do have to do it now. How am I going to live up to the people that have gone before? And everyone was saying, oh, Anton and Joe have done that job, and I'm like, I know. So it was with some trepidation as well as real excitement that I took up the job. And I think what really struck me as you do when you're thinking about applying for a job, you do a lot of reading, and what really struck me was how aligned to my values the staff college was. And I think that's one of the, you know, throughout the whole of the evolution of the staff college, the thing that really remains strong is that real values-driven organisational piece. What you said earlier about, you know, not being about one individual, it being about what's good for the for the sector. So the fact that the staff college is by the sector for the sector, it's both responsive to needs that emerge, because sometimes things change very quickly, but also forward-looking and looking at the art of the possible. And so it was really, and creating those safe spaces that you talked about, where people can come together in what are really challenging roles, in really challenging contexts, and can, they're not given ready solutions, but given a time to think and to work together and learn together. And so it has been a massive privilege having that opportunity, despite the fact that I still have to pinch myself sometimes and think, 2.5 years on, am I worthy? It really is such a privilege, and to see how people grow through the support and development, the opportunities that we help them create for themselves and help their organisations and create, and to see how people, you know, then give back. You know, we have so much voluntary time given to us by senior leaders, by other stakeholders, and I think what I've seen I suppose what I'd hope people would see, it'd be interesting to have your observations of the staff college now and how it's moved on, but what I see is a really ambitious team as well. You know, they're really keen, they're really motivated, they they really get what the staff college is about as well,
Yeah.
even though many of them have come from very, very different backgrounds. We've got people from performing arts, from business, from a whole range of backgrounds, but they feel very much aligned to what the staff college is there to do, and can see that through developing the leaders of the sector we can make a real difference to the communities that they serve and work in, you know, that and I think that piece around this is not just about directors of education or directors of social care or people who operate in a youth environment or people who do this. This is about systems leadership and how that impacts on communities. And I think that's, it's something that's very special. And I hope I have done justice to your legacies and continue to do as we move forward as well, because I think it's, I'd said in my interview, I hope that you will see me someone who will really respect the heart of the staff college, but will also look to do some things differently and move things forward.
As indeed you are.
And so that's what that's what I felt I could bring to the organisation. And as I say, it was intimidating, thinking how can I add value to an organisation who's already got such an amazing reputation. But I hope that I have added value over the last couple of years. So that's what brought me here. And it's both flown and feels like I've been here forever as well. Time's a strange thing, isn't it? So really building on, I think, some of the things that you've given such strong foundations to. I was really lucky to inherit quite a secure financial position, the reputation that you've built, and that gives me something to really go forward with.